evening, it's 8 o'clock. I'm Sally Baudet, live from Johannesburg. Your top stories this evening. The Water and Sanitation Department under fire as gift of the givers withdraws from drought-stricken Makhanda. Cutting back. Government says they will spend 100 million rand less at the Loftus Versfeld inauguration than they did at former President Jacob Zuma's swearing in. And in addition to facing corruption charges, eThekwini Mayor Zandile Gumede now faces a revolt from workers demanding permanent employment by the city. A storm is brewing in the city of Saints. Makhanda Municipality, suffering a crippling drought, says the decision by Gift of the Givers to withdraw their support from Grahamstown will have dire consequences. Now, the NGO, which has been drilling boreholes for water, says it's leaving because a payment agreement has been reneged on. But as Tammy Dixon reports, the municipality is denying any such deal.
The water crisis has almost collapsed the small town of Makhanda.
I work on a month.
Taps have been running dry for months. 2 months ago, Gift of the Givers intervened with critical water resources. It drilled the 15 boreholes, including this one, bringing stability to communities. But that's where the good news ends. The humanitarian organization has now pulled out of a non-payment.
2 days ago, in a meeting, they suddenly tell us 10 million rand is available, but the money is not coming to us. We said, why? They said it has to go for the drought intervention in Makhanda, for work. But we said, we've done all the work already.
The municipality, however, denies it had a deal in place to pay the Gift of the Givers for the work it did.
Their coming into town was really in terms of assisting the municipality, not necessarily to be paid, because they came in to offer a service in terms of their generosity to the municipality.
The municipality says it will now hire local companies to connect the boreholes that Gift of the Givers drilled.
We received 12 million from the DWS for disaster, particularly on the underground water study, and that was never a promise to the Gift of the Givers.
With the humanitarian aid gone, will Makhanda be able to weather this crisis? Tammy Dixon in Makhanda.
The new president will be inaugurated on the 25th of May, not at the Union Buildings, but at a stadium best known for its rugby matches, Loftus Versfeld in Pretoria. This break in tradition not only means more ordinary South Africans can attend, it also slashes the budget. It's going to cost 100 million rand less than President Zuma's 2014 inauguration. Moloko Moloto has the story.
Usually, Loftus Versfeld Stadium is a hive of sporting activity. But come next week Saturday, the home of the Blue Bulls rugby team will make way for pomp and ceremony as the red carpet is rolled out for President-elect. While government says it will cut more than 100 million rand from what it spent in 2014, the celebration will still cost a fortune.
But it's not going to be any much more than the 120. And last time it was more than 240. So, but until you have the event, you can't tell to the cent how much it has cost.
Those who will attend must first know the rules.
Alcohol and drugs, firearms or any weapons, bottles and cans are not allowed at the stadium.
But prior to this, Parliament at its first sitting on the 22nd of May must elect a president. Upon assuming office, the president will assemble the cabinet, choosing individuals according to their skills and political relevance. This important selection will hint at South Africa's new path. Moloko Moloto, Pretoria.
Down to Durban now, and eThekwini Mayor Zandile Gumede is still in her job, despite being charged in court on Tuesday with corruption and fraud relating to a solid waste tender. Our reporter Makhanda Municipality looks at the charges she faces and the growing calls for her to step down.
Any mayor facing serious allegations of widespread fraud and corruption should not be in office. That's according to researcher Mary THIS.
What any politician with any sense of propriety and ethics would do is say, I'll stand aside until the court case is over.
Embattled eThekwini Mayor Zandile Gumede is facing a raft of charges over a Durban solid waste tender amounting to an estimated 208 million rand. She and 11 others are facing 7 charges, among them fraud and fraud by omission, contravention of the Local Government Municipal Act and contravention of the Prevention of Organised Crime Act. eThekwini residents say enough is enough.
Us as a citizen of South Africa, we are not happy, especially when it's come to a mayor that has committed corruption.
If she's facing charges of corruption, let her be given time to go and prepare herself and get dealt with, and then if he's not found guilty, then can come back.
As things stand, Gumede is out on 50,000 rand bail and will report for duty. Makhanda Municipality, Durban.
The problems facing the troubled eThekwini Municipality are far from over. Hundreds of workers today took to the streets demanding permanent employment by the city. Now, the people protesting say they've been part of the extended public works programme for the past 11 years and are always ignored when permanent jobs are on offer. The municipality says some of the demands are justified. Workers have given the city 7 working days to respond.
As far as we understand, EPWP was formed to equip people in order for them to fit in position and start their own business and whatever. But since today, nothing has been done.
We are still yet to study the memorandum accordingly, and we will respond to them once we have studied and addressed their concerns.
From eThekwini to Tshwane, where Stevens Mokhalapa's days as mayor could be numbered, the EFF is pushing to appoint one of its own members in his position. Julius Malema today gave his assessment of the election results. The party's success at the polls means 44 EFF members will now go to Parliament. Malema also says things are going to change in Tshwane. The EFF and the DA are in a power-sharing deal. And Malema says that means a DA mayor for Joburg and an EFF mayor for Pretoria.
EFF has got leaders in Tshwane. Let leaders of EFF in Tshwane lead the municipality of Tshwane. Why should there be someone from Tshwane who's going to lead Tshwane municipality? What are you saying about those people of the EFF who continue to increase votes of the EFF in Tshwane? Let EFF leaders in Tshwane lead the municipality in Tshwane. We are not passing any motion of no confidence. I don't know where you got that. We have been sitting here with you in the press conferences of the EFF. We never said we were going to pass any motion of no confidence. This is a power sharing. We're already talking to the DA. We're sharing power in Joburg. We're sharing power in Tshwane. So how are we going to do it? Let's do it in a manner that is not going to be disruptive.
Other news making local headlines now. The cross-examination of Duduzane Zuma wrapped up today in his culpable homicide trial. Zuma's facing charges over the death of a passenger in a minibus taxi that he crashed into with his Porsche in February 2014. Now, he was asked today whether travelling between 90 and 100 kilometres an hour is an appropriate speed, considering the wet weather on the night of the accident. Zuma remains confident it was. The case resumes on the 20th of June for closing arguments. Despite a decline in support, the Democratic Alliance partied up a storm in Cape Town today to thank their voters. The party received 55% of the vote in the Western Cape during last week's election, compared to close to 60% in 2014. DA leader Musi Maimane dropped by to congratulate Premier-elect Alan Winde. The on-off relationship between Bongekile Babes Wodumo Similani and Mandla Mampintsha Mapumulo has sparked renewed conversations around abuse. The two artists have publicly accused each other of assault, and Mapumulo's case is currently before the courts. Tshwane spoke to a psychologist to find out if relationships can survive domestic abuse.
Is Durban's popular musical couple back together? Well, Bongekile Babes Wodumo Similane has made a showing in court for Mandla Mampintsha Mapumulo's appearance this week. And they've recently produced a song together. He's facing charges of assault for allegedly beating her. Now, the court has ordered they attend counselling to resolve their differences. But is it possible to rebuild a relationship after abuse? A Durban-based relationship therapist, speaking generally, says it is.
It needs to be consistent. So it really is very easy for someone to behave for a week and to treat you well for 1 week. But if the partner treats you well for a sustained period of time, then it is possible to rebuild the trust again.
There's lots of work to be done, though.
So I also think each partner taking responsibility for how they maintain that abusive relationship is important.
Bikram says victims of abuse should not be judged for holding onto a relationship, but should instead be supported by their loved ones.
At some point, they fell in love with some part of the abuser. And they have this fantasy that he is going to change and become that person again. So they hold on to this hope and continuously go back in the hope that it would change.
Mampintsha will be back in court on the 11th of June, where a report on the outcome of their counselling will be presented. Tshwane, Durban.
Still ahead on eNews, a hiccup in negotiations in Sudan as the country's military leaders demand protesters clear roadblocks in Khartoum.
And in your business news, the JSE was slightly higher today as trade tensions between China and the US simmer, but the rand did show some weakness.
Let's get the latest from the world of business with Rafiwa. And Moody's is quite down on us despite the positive sentiment after last week's election.
That's very true, Sally. So unlike Fitch that came out earlier in the week about the outlook for South Africa's economy following the elections, Moody's has said that long-term growth outlook in the country is pretty dim. And the things that Moody's focus on here in terms of the report that they've compiled is the socio-economic inequality as well as fiscal stability. Our fiscal health has completely been destroyed by that bloated cabinet that's been spoken about over the course of the week, as well as the continued bailout to the likes of Eskom. And it's a really dim outlook in the sense that government has indicated that it's going to continue to bail out Eskom. We've seen with that emergency funding that they gave them just a few weeks ago. So what Moody's is saying here is that in the next 3 years, we're going to see debt to GDP rise to about 65%. And if Eskom continues to get that 69 billion in funding over the next 3 years, it might even increase to 70%. This is a dismal outlook for the prospect of creating jobs and really reviving that economy.
So that's basically nearly 3/4 of our budget goes to paying off our debt.
Goes to paying off debt.
It's too frightening.
Very scary.
Some better news, MTN finally listing in Nigeria. That has been a long and winding road.
It's been a long time coming, but we've seen that MTN and Nigeria have been at loggerheads for a number of years in terms of disputes, in terms of MTN's conduct in the country. The latest being a tax evasion charge by the Attorney General in Nigeria. So they are told that they owe about $2 billion there. But this did not put down the mood of investors. We're very excited about the listing on the Nigerian Stock Exchange, the second biggest company to be listed there. Very important for the MTN Group because it makes about, it's the third biggest profit contributor rather to the MTN Group. The problem though, this is an introduction listing. So what this means is that while it's listed on the Nigerian Stock Exchange, no one can actually buy or sell the shares at the moment. And this is of course until that tax evasion case has been sorted out. But they are hoping, investors are hopeful that this will help with the growth of the company.
So a few more twists in that particular road. How are the markets today?
Much better day on the markets today, Sally. So the JSE closed a little higher today. So we saw global markets undeterred by the continued tit-for-tat trade-off battle between China and the US. Now that tension between the two superpowers has been the main driver of the markets this week. Banks and some of those retailers were comfortably in the positive today. If we take a look at your commodities, the price of gold and platinum down today, but Brent crude oil edging ever closer to $73 a barrel. Now it has been supported by concerns over possible conflict in the Middle East. If we take a look at your local unit now, the rand a tad bit weaker against the US dollar today. Now analysts generally saying that the local currency is still benefiting from that positive post-election sentiment, and this of course despite those global trade tensions, Sally.
Thank you very much, Rufiwa Madzena. Let's moving now to news from the Horn of Africa. Negotiations to move Sudan towards civilian rule have been suspended for 3 days. This as the country's military leaders demand protesters clear roadblocks in the capital, Khartoum. Demonstrators have been shot at. Several were injured yesterday as they clashed with the military.
Sudanese forces used live ammunition to clear demonstrators in the capital on Wednesday, injuring at least 9 and infuriating thousands. Sudanese witnesses said troops and military vehicles fired extensively at crowds of protesters.
Live ammunition that has been going on for like almost a minute now, almost a minute.
The paramilitary denied this. And now the ruling military councils announced talks with the opposition to lead the North East African country to a democracy have been suspended for 72 hours. Protesters, though, are vowing to continue sit-ins outside the Defence Ministry and across the country. Wednesday's violence has cast a shadow on the talks that seemed to be progressing well. The two sides had announced early on Wednesday that they'd agreed on a make-up of the Legislative Council and the length of the transition, a 3-year period until presidential elections.
Still ahead, we'll go to our weather centre in Cape Town for your weather news with Louis. Hey there, Louis. And then Sarah Kamalo is on top of the world, the first black African woman to summit Mount Everest. As we edge closer to the weekend, let's get your weather news with Louis Fernandez. Good evening to you, Louis. How's it looking?
Good evening, Sally. Another quiet day over South Africa today, and that continues into tomorrow. But we are seeing a little bit of overnight rain close to the coastline of KwaZulu-Natal, but by sunrise that should be gone. After that, we'll be shifting our attention to the western parts of the country as fog will be making its way down the Atlantic coastline, reaching Table Bay later on. And then there's also this area of unstable air that will be moving over the Northern Cape, bubbling cloud over the area, perhaps bringing a few showers to the region. And those conditions shift into the Eastern Cape later on in the day. But here's your city forecast, and we can see for the Northern Cape a few isolated light showers possible for some areas, and fog along the coast keeping Alexander Bay cool with a high of 19. That fog makes its way down the coastline, reaching Cape Town in the later afternoon and evening, but for the interior of the Western Cape, another warm day with temperatures above 25. Warm across the Eastern Cape as well for the afternoon, and a little bit later you can expect a few very isolated showers for many parts of this province. In KwaZulu-Natal, it's going to be another warm day, 27 as a high for Ulundi, Richards Bay, as well as Pietermaritzburg, and a chilly morning on the Mpumalanga Highveld with eMakhazeni and Standerton dropping down to 4 degrees. Similar temperatures over the southern parts of Limpopo in the morning. Bella Bella, very chilly, 6 degrees your starting temperature, but also climbing to a high of 27. Sunshine and warm weather continuing across the northwest. A little bit of cloud cover bubbles up, but there will definitely be no rain over the area. And in the Free State, we'll see thicker cloud reaching the western and southern parts, but there is also no rain in the forecast. And finally, for Gauteng, virtually identical conditions to what you've had for all of this week as the sunshine and warm weather continues. Let's look ahead to your weekend, and Saturday brings with it more sunshine and warm conditions all across the northern parts. A cooler day for Cape Town with thicker cloud in the area. And then on Sunday, a cold front will be approaching. That will bring evening rain to the mother city, otherwise dry over South Africa, while Bergwins will push temperatures into the 30s along the southern and east coasts of the country. That's it from the Weather Centre. Back to you, Sally.
Thank you very much, Louis Fernandez in Cape Town. And finally, South African climber Sarah Khumalo has become the first black African woman to conquer Mount Everest. It was the fourth time lucky for Khumalo, whose previous attempts were thwarted by weather. She abandoned her 2014 attempt after an avalanche killed 16 people. Her 2015 attempt was cut short after a devastating earthquake in Nepal. She reached the